Okay, well, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the main set of slides. I've just attached this set of 6 slides here as another activity that you might want to do or to work through. Um, Basically, it's me just really talking about 3 slides, and then there's a couple of questions that you might want to think about. This set of slides really is to do with education and class and money, and how we can try and explain educational success. Is educational success only down to money, or is it also down to other things, such as cultural factors, who you know, and so on? So, once you've had a look at the main slides, have a look at these slides as well. This is another activity. Hopefully you enjoy it. And then there's a little a little survey you can take at the end, which will try and locate what sort of class you are. Okay, so do you recognise this chap? Um, this is this is not a picture of me, of course. This is in fact a man called Michael Carroll, as it says on the caption there. Now, Michael Carroll became famous nearly 20 years ago now in 2002 because he won a substantial amount of money. I think it was about 10 million pounds on the national lottery, and he rapidly, within the course of about a year, spent all of his money on champagne, fast cars, big houses, and so on. And he was rapidly dubbed by many of the newspapers at the time the King of Chavs, a title he himself was very proud of. And the reason I show you this is because it raises a very important question about money and class, and the relationship between money and class to education. So, in the case of Michael Carroll, although he had a lot of money, which elevated him to be the equal of some very powerful, influential middle and upper class families, nevertheless, he still retained something of a working class character about him. In fact, he himself explained that it was because he was working class that led him to squander, as some people saw it, his money. So it raises the question in terms of the relationship between money and class. And that's something to think about. Because if Michael Carroll had money but no class, then what is it that determines the class of an individual? If it is not money, it must be something else. And in education and in sociology, we think of class as being not just about money, but about culture and about networks. The people that you know and the type of person that you are in terms of, for example, the things you enjoy doing. And it's those things, according to a lot of the writers in education, that determine how well you do educationally. So I'd like you to think about Michael Carroll and just think about this relationship between money, class, and educational success. This quotation comes from a lady called Diane Ray. Now, Diane Ray is a professor at Cambridge, one of the finest institutions in the world. And Diane Ray, as she explains in this autobiographical piece here, came from a working class background. And she went to a grammar school, and from grammar school went to university and into teaching, and then into university teaching. But this quotation, and please do read it, is very interesting for 2 reasons. And I've highlighted the 2 reasons here in bold. The first thing to take away from it is this idea that Diane Ray, coming from a working class background, going to a grammar school, a selective type school, shouldn't be there. There must be a mistake. Diane can't have passed, people were saying. And that's important because it raises a very interesting question about expectations of certain groups of students. Are there different expectations for working class students as opposed to middle class students? Why is that the case? Why might that be the case? And the second point to look at is, again, I put it in bold at the bottom, is Diane Ray saying that she felt like an alien in a strange, incomprehensible world. In other words, that education is structured for certain groups of people and not others. Many people writing about education argue that it is middle-class children who do well because middle-class children, in a sense, fit the culture of schools and schooling in a way that working-class children do not. And as a result of not fitting, working-class children become, in Diane Ray's words, invisible and silent. So they're overlooked, they're not considered, they're treated very differently. And this is something I want you to think about, and I want you to think about in your own mind. First of all, what might a middle class child look like? What might a working class child look like? What do we mean by class? But also, how different groups of people respond to education, because they're going through the same process, sometimes in the same school, in the same class, with the same teachers, but how and why do they respond differently to it? And that, again, is a really key question, and one of the key questions that we debate and talk about on this course. This quotation, not from Diane Ray, but from somebody else, raises another point that is worth thinking about, which is not to do with class, but to do with race. How do people from different ethnic backgrounds get treated within education? And this is a question that we explore in some detail, because the research suggests that actually if you are not white, then you are treated very differently to if your skin color is white. So for example, and using this quotation, this lady is black. The assumption around her, because she was black, was that she wouldn't succeed at school, she wouldn't pass exams, she wouldn't get particularly good results. Now, we have made progress on this in this country, I think, but there is still a large amount of tacit racism, a large amount of stereotyping around people from different ethnic backgrounds, whether that's from Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Afro-Caribbean. And a lot of this stereotyping occurs in schools. And so it negatively affects the results that people achieve and the career destinations that people can go on to. And it's not right. But why is it there? How does it manifest? And again, these are the sorts of questions that I urge you to think about, because they're certainly the sorts of questions that on our course we put centre stage and ask you to debate. So what I want to ask you as potential applicants is this: how might you make education fairer for everybody? Is it all about money? Is it all about the amount of money you've got and the things you can buy for your child? Or does educational success come back to more than that? Does it come down to your gender? Does it come down to your ethnicity? Does it come down to your class? Can you move between those things? In terms of gender and ethnicity, perhaps not. But in terms of class, perhaps you can. Does that affect your educational outcome? It didn't affect Michael Carroll's outcome when he had a lot of money. So, thinking about ethnicity, gender, class, how they impact upon education, how they impact upon the life chances of young people from the day they start school is really, really important. And these are the issues that you have to think about, because these are the issues that matter. They matter to me and they matter to my colleagues on our team. And by thinking about these issues, by developing your own answers, ultimately you'll become a far better teacher and someone who will get so much out of an education degree at Keele. Okay, this is just a bit of fun for you, but this is a link to the BBC News Magazine class survey, and you can fill this in and find out what class you are. Now, one of the questions is to do with whether you rent or own a home, and I imagine a lot of you probably still live with your parents. So it might be something you can fill in with them, or you can imagine, that you're renting a house or something like that, as you perhaps will when you get to university. But you'll see that by asking a series of questions, what the thing is doing is trying to put you into a particular class, dependent partly upon the job you do, the types of people you know, the things you enjoy doing in your spare time, and so on. So class isn't just to be equated with money. Um, and when you're doing this, and it is a bit of fun, but when you're doing this, always have at the back of your mind that question: what does class mean? How can we understand class? Is it just something to do with the amount of money that you have in your bank, or is it to do with wider cultural and social factors? And then think, how do they impact upon my education? How might they impact upon how well I do in school, and why? And if you can start thinking about things like that, you're well on the way to thinking about education critically, which is exactly what we try and do on our course.